Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. In today's video, we're going to briefly analyze Arda Guler's key role as the catalyst to help Real Madrid make easy work of Kairat Almaty and their 5-0 win to remain perfect in UEFA Champions League action. But before we get into today's video, don't forget to check out our previous Real Madrid content where we break down the main issues that Xavi Alonso experienced in the Madrid derby, and we also focus on the key tactical themes that played a key role in them making easy work of Levante. So when we break it all down and we do look at the board, we have the host in a 4-4-2 and Real Madrid shifting to a 4-2-3-1 with Xavi Alonso making several changes to 11. You see a new center back partnership with Alaba and Hausen, Asensio and Fran Garcia out in the fullback roles, and then in that midfield zone was Ceballos and Tchouaméni just in behind Arda Guler, who was serving as a number 10, with Vini Jr. and Master out in the wider areas and Mbappe leading the line. So in today's video, we're solely going to focus on Arda Guler, who once again played very well, this time in a number 10 role for Real Madrid. And here, when you look at both systems on paper, he should have the advantage as Madrid are 3v2 in that midfield area. However, we did see the hosts look to have their two center forwards sitting on the deepest midfielder that did look to pick up the ball, whether that was Ceballos or Tchouaméni, and that would allow their central midfielders to pick up Guler and the central midfielder that was looking to push a bit forward or remain central. However, what ended up happening here was that the Turkish midfielder did have the ability to float throughout that midfield zone and at times push high so he was level with Mbappe or slightly playing off him, and that would force one of the center backs to step or stick with him. And when they didn't do that and you have Vini Jr. and Mastantuono out in the wider areas, it creates a bit of freedom for Arda Guler to get into positions to receive the ball. However, Madrid did have to find ways to get the ball towards him, and when you look at the hosts' overall shape out of possession, it was your standard 4-4-2, but the issue that they had here was in terms of stopping Real Madrid, they were simply disjointed, and they were pushing forward with their 6 attacking players. Then their back 4 couldn't push higher up the pitch due to the fact that they were worried of the threat and the pace of Mastantuono, Vini Jr. and Mbappe. In the same breath, if Arda Guler wasn't looking to receive the ball between the lines, he simply had the freedom to drop off a bit deeper and pick up the ball ahead of the Kairat Almaty midfield bank due to the fact that he didn't have a natural man marker that was looking to swarm him across the pitch. The problem that the hosts encountered was that if Arda Guler picked up the ball ahead of the midfield bank, he would draw markers towards him. Then from there, that would create space for Vini Jr., Mbappe, or Mastantuono to step into, and then they could simply bypass the midfield in that capacity, because you often had Vini Jr. looking to move into central areas closer to Mbappe, whereas Mastantuono was often hugging the touchline. The other issue that the hosts encountered was that if Ceballos or Tchouaméni picked up the ball in those midfield zones, they would drag a marker towards them, and they also had the capability of dribbling around them, and then Arda Guler would drop into the space that midfielder left vacant, and from there he would be able to receive the ball from his teammates, look forward and simply have a back 4 to run at, and then from there he did a very good job of progressing play out and towards the wider areas to get Vini Jr., Mastantuono, or Mbappe in space to run at the fullbacks. And then if Arda Guler wasn't operating in the middle or his own third, he could simply adopt positions in between the opposing side's fullbacks and center backs, and then look to receive that ball in that zone to serve as a goal-scoring threat, or look to playing teammates out in wide areas or in behind the back line. So it was evident that we witnessed different aspects on how Guler impacted the game, and one of them stemmed with his combinations with the midfielders or the center backs. When Hausen was on the ball, you would often see the two Kairat Almaty center forwards sitting in between Tchouaméni and Ceballos to attempt to get them out of the game, and there were times where that allowed space for Hausen to get on the ball and then find ways to split the midfield bank to find Arda Guler in pockets of space, and from there he did a very good job of receiving the ball either in that gap or just ahead of that gap, draw markers towards him, and then slide the ball out and towards wide areas for advancing fullbacks or Mastantuono or Vini Jr. However, it was when the likes of their front 6 looked to press forward with the wide players closing down the fullbacks, the strikers closing the center backs, and then Arad and Casabulat stepping towards Tchouaméni and Ceballos, that created space for Arda Guler to drop in towards the midfield zone, receive the ball. He had the ability to evade pressure as he is press resistant, and then look to switch the ball out and towards the wider areas. However, the hosts were lucky that there were scenarios where Arda Guler received the ball in dangerous positions and simply lacked the instinct to play in teammates or provide the cutting edge in and around the host penalty area. If you look to one of Madrid's better chances in that opening period, you have Tchouaméni running at the back 4, 4, and he simply splits the central midfield duo to find Arda Guler in that pocket of space between the lines. He ends up pulling out a center back, and from there that creates space for him to combine with Vinny Jr., who did move a bit central, and they play the quick 1-2 around both defenders for Arda Guler to receive the ball in space that the center back left vacant. And from there, that now leaves space for Mbappe to receive a pass from Arda Guler in between the fullback and the center back. And from here, Mbappe does receive it. Guler continues his run in towards left half space, and he could be played in. But his run also creates space for Mbappe to get a quality shot off on goal, as Guler's run takes away the center back out of the game. And from there, Mbappe forces the keeper into a save for a corner. Ultimately, this was a key combination for Real Madrid, where Tchouaméni would receive the ball beyond the front two, and from there you would see him carry the ball towards the midfield bank, Arda Guler not being closed down by a center back and sitting in that pocket of space, and then Madrid relying on Tchouaméni to bypass that midfield bank, get the ball to Arda Guler, and then pull out the left center back, and from there he could carry the ball towards the final third. And ultimately the issue that Madrid encountered on occasions was that Arda Guler lacked the execution and the final pass to get his teammates into legitimate goal scoring positions, and that simply let them down from killing off this game earlier. You can look to an example where it's Tchouaméni at the center circle just to the right of Jorginho, and you could see Arda Guler looking to make a forward run with Mbappe, and what ends up happening is that he checks his run back, Tchouaméni drags Jorginho towards him, and there's no tight pressure applied, so Tchouaméni is able to split the central midfielder and the left midfielder for Arda Guler to receive the ball between the lines. Mbappe's drifted into that zone as well, and from here, because no pressure is applied towards Arda Guler, he's able to bypass the back line. However, his pass is slightly overhit, and rather than playing Mbappe in a position to get a shot off on goal, he's forced to receive the ball near the byline and play it back towards his teammates to retain possession. Ultimately, this was the decisive factor that deprived Arda Guler from a 10 out of 10 masterclass performance here, as while he did a very good job of receiving the ball between the lines or just ahead of the midfield bank or in the pockets, when he did receive the ball, while he was press resistant and able to create space for himself to create for his teammates, when they made runs in behind to get into good positions, he simply lacked the execution to place them in those zones to create legitimate goal scoring chances. There was one example in particular where he's able to receive the ball beyond the midfield bank and he drags out a center back, and he's able to pull the ball towards his left, and the center back is unable to get towards him, and he locates the run of Mbappe breaking beyond the host's high line. But when he plays that pass for Mbappe, it's slightly under hit, and the two defenders that are tracking that movement of Mbappe are able to recover and cut out the pass. And then there were just scenarios in the final third where he did have the good movement to receive the ball in space or break in beyond a defender to get the ball in zones where he could create, but when he was looking to dribble past defenders, he failed to get the better of them. And then in terms of his passing, there were just several moments where he was able to get his teammates into good positions, breaking and beyond, and he simply lacked that final pass, and that halted the Madrid attack. Ultimately, the build-up to the two goals that Arda Guler was involved in summed up his impact in this game and the issues that the hosts encountered with this Madrid side. First, you end up seeing Hausen and Ceballos playing around the striker, and you have Tchouaméni dropping back into the midfield zone and Arda Guler looking to break beyond the midfield bank. And what ends up happening is that they play the quick 1-2 around the striker, and you could see Arda Guler looking to break in towards the space in between the lines that is now vacant because you have the front six looking to close down the Madrid central midfielders and the center backs. What ends up happening is that Hausen receives the ball, Tchouaméni occupies a central midfielder, and Hausen's passing ability ends up bypassing the midfield bank. Arda Guler is able to receive the ball between the lines, and now ends up happening is that as he turns, you could see recovering pressure from behind, but there's passing outlets for Mbappe, Vinny Jr., and Fran Garcia breaking forward. However, when that pass is played, it is short, and the right back's able to clear it, but he ends up clearing it upwards towards the center back, who nods the ball towards the goalkeeper, and Mastantuono is able to read that. He's able to get onto the short header before the goalkeeper, who ends up taking him out and creating an opportunity for Mbappe to convert from the spot. And then the Madrid goal that ended up killing off the game witnessed some great individual play from Rodrigo, but he finds Arda Guler in that space between the center back and the fullback, and rather than looking to get a shot on goal or spread it wide towards Brahim Diaz, he ends up dropping it off into the path of Mbappe, placing him in a position to beat the goalkeeper. So as you can see, while Kylian Mbappe will rightly steal the headlines for Real Madrid following his pivotal hat-trick, it must be noted that Arda Guler's ability to create, link midfield to attack, and progress the away side's play serve as a justifiable reason as to why he deserves to keep his place in Xabi Alonso's 11 when Villarreal travel to the Bernabeu.